We turn to former IDF spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus. Thank you for joining us as well. Many Israelis have taken to the streets following the devastating deaths of these 6 hostages, calling on Prime Minister Netanyahu to bring the remaining hostages home. Is the Prime Minister doing enough to rescue hostages from Gaza?
Yes, hi, thank you. Sad day for many Israelis and Americans, and I think people who believe in freedom and democracy. I would say that many Israelis believe that he isn't, and many believe that the priorities of this Israeli government are not straight and have gotten mixed up, and that is why people probably will take to the streets and express their frustration with the fact that these 6 hostages were alive for 330 days in Hamas captivity in hell underground, and were executed by their Hamas captors just one day before their bodies were taken out. And what Israelis now are saying, like the summary of the debate here is, what is the Israeli government willing to pay in order to get hostages back, live hostages back? Up until now, I think that the Israeli government has not been willing to cede to Hamas's demands, and maybe as a result of the tragic and horrible events of the last 24 hours, maybe we'll see a change in that. At the end of the day, I think we have to be clear about really the cause and effect here. These, whereas other things could have been done by the Israeli government and specifically by the Prime Minister, at the end of the day, we are talking about a savage enemy that is using hostages, women, children, babies, and men and soldiers in the most cynical and cruel way. And we'll see how the events of today, and hopefully we won't see anything drastic and horrific in the events. I personally am a bit concerned that we will see some kind of extremist approach today, and I hope that can be avoided, and I hope that people can show their dissatisfaction with the government without it spilling over into violence or anything else.
Yeah, what do you mean extremist approach? What are you worried might happen?
Well, you know, the tensions, the emotions are extremely high, and I totally understand the families of hostages who are seeing this and are scared of death for the fate of their loved ones, and they will stop at nothing in order to get them home. And I think that there's a very high level of despair, and desperate people, when they feel that they are not listened to and they are not heard, maybe they make desperate moves. And I hope that can be avoided, and I hope, and I have faith that the Israeli government will listen and will heed the recommendations of the defense establishment and will listen to the families and take the necessary action. No, none of the options are good here, but take the necessary action in order to maximize the chances of getting live Israelis home from Hamas captivity. Having said that, there should be no confusion. This war cannot end with an existing Hamas and with Hamas governing the Gaza Strip. Even Vice President Harris said so in her message. Hamas cannot be allowed to govern the Gaza Strip, and this must not be the ending of the war. But I think that the Israeli government has to be more creative and find ways to get Israeli civilians back home.
And the Israeli government was saying that they were on their way to rescue these hostages, and then they were killed prior to them being rescued. How do you know that they were killed then, or were they killed prior to this? How do you know that information, or that you can trust the information potentially coming from Hamas and what you're learning that's happening in the tunnels under Gaza?
Yeah, none of this information is from Hamas. This is IDF information. It's based on forensic analysis of the bodies, and the fact that it was not a hot entry. It wasn't Israeli troops that stormed the tunnel. There was no firefight there because there were no Hamas terrorists there. And based on a forensic analysis of the bodies and the remains, what is the working assumption is that they were executed hours to within a day of the time that their bodies were found. And the assumption is that Hamas terrorists, they understood that the IDF was nearby, searching, looking, trying to find them, but not really at the tunnel location itself, and then maybe panicked, maybe understood that there's no other way. They executed the Israeli hostages and then fled. And the Israeli soldiers got there and unfortunately got there too late and only found bodies.
Our hearts are certainly with those families today. Former IDF spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, thank you for your insight. We appreciate your time today.